Welcome, everyone, to Bobbo's World podcast. Today, we have our special guest, former WWE and TNA wrestler TJ Perkins. How you doing, TJ?
I'm doing all right. I gotta have to ask you, is Bobbo's World, is that a reference to Bobby's World?
No, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
That's my generation. So I saw
yeah,
that and I got a kick out of it. So
yeah. It's from my niece's nephew. Call me Uncle Bobbo. My real name's Robert.
okay. Oh, I got you. I see.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much for having me.
thank you for being here. So you were born in Kansas City, but grew up in Riverside, right? California.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. Missouri born and Southern California raised.
How did you like growing up in Riverside?
It was cool. I kind of grew up out in the sticks in the orange groves. Riverside is a mix of a little bit of urban, a little bit of suburbia, and a little bit of like rural, like kind of there's a lot of orange groves out there. So we're just outside of the city. So like for people outside of Southern California, we're like 45 minutes outside of Los Angeles. So
Okay.
we got a little bit of mix of everything there. But I grew up out in the hills and I like it. I liked it. So yeah.
Yeah. So do you say you're from LA to other people that don't know it?
Yeah, yeah, it's really the easiest way to explain to people. It's funny because there was not that long ago, New Japan had a an event nearby my hometown, which is Ontario, California. It's
Mhm.
kind of Riverside adjacent, and I mentioned in an interview or maybe a promo or something for it that I'll see so and so in Los Angeles, and there was a local that was like, you like that's not even where the show is, and I said,
Eh,
guys, there's outside of us, nobody knows the difference, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah, I know how that. I'm from Lynn, Massachusetts, but we just say Boston because nobody knows what Lynn is.
Right. Like if you say like if you like for people from Lowell, you would just say,
Yep.
well, I'm from Boston. And then,
Yep.
but if you're from Boston or Lowell, you know the difference. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you've wrestled in Lowell, right? Sognus Arena.
a few times. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice place. Yeah, so reading on your stats and stuff, you have the same birthday as my mom, September
Oh
3rd. Yeah,
yeah.
so that's
Wow.
pretty cool.
That's amazing. What a coincidence.
Yeah. We just went to visit her just now. She's in a nursing home, unfortunately. She has dementia, but she was doing good. She was smiling and everything. So it just made me think of it. I was like, oh, cool, you have the same birthday.
Well, that's a nice coincidence. I'm glad that she's feeling all right.
Thank you. How did you get into wrestling originally?
So, yeah, I was so young when I started. I was 13 and when I was younger, I was really bad at, career day and things like that. I never had any aspirations really in life and so I had wanted I had an interest in wrestling obviously and when I was approaching high school age, I looked into if the high school that I was going to go to had an amateur wrestling program because at the time we didn't have like anything. I mean, like the internet all like kind of didn't exist
Yeah.
the way that it does now, like because we're talking like 1997, 1998 is when I was like 12, 13 years old. So, trying to gather information was, I mean, there was really nothing. Wrestling schools did not really exist the way they do now. They did, but like again, there's no internet, so you can't really, there's no
Mhm.
advertising for it. So, other than seeing some ads in like PWI magazine and things like that that you would see like it like physically in real life. I just didn't know. I would, you read wrestlers' books and you just see like, okay, these guys were all former football players and former amateur wrestlers and stuff like that. So I thought, well, if I get into amateur wrestling when I go to high school, then it'll work itself out, like that's
Yeah.
it'll present itself, I didn't know how it worked as a kid. And the school didn't have an amateur wrestling program, so I just kind of thought, okay, well, I guess that's it. And then it just so happened that in summer school, I had summer school classes before high school started, like pre-high school classes. And there's a kid in my class had a wrestling school t-shirt on from a local area in San Bernardino, California. And we became friends, and he told me what it was. He had just started taking wrestling lessons there himself, and it was like I had written letters, letters, because again, we didn't have cell phones really back then. Like you had to be like a CEO or like a business person to have a cell phone. Like most people, the people still had pagers, right? So, and we didn't really have. There was no social media. Most people didn't have email addresses really. So
Mhm.
I wrote physical letters to wrestling schools that I saw advertised in like PWI, things like that. But I would have had to move to Florida or to up north to San Francisco to Ohio to New Jersey or something like that to go to these schools. And you had to be 18 or 21 years or older, so that was out. And, when I met that kid, they let all ages into the gym. And thankfully, being in Southern California, most of the stuff, especially at that time, was very like, lucha libre coded, I
Yeah.
guess you could say.
Yeah.
So, you know, they don't discriminate by age, like Mexican wrestling, just like boxing. I mean, if you could stand, they'll put you in the ring and see what, it becomes part of your upbringing. So, they trained anybody of any age, and I went, and they quickly realized that I was not just there to be in like a kids class. And I mean, it was a few weeks later that I was already put into matches. So,
Nice.
I was off and running as a 13-year-old idiot in
Yep.
a freshman in high school, didn't know what he was doing in life. So,
That's cool. Yeah, you're around my age, so I remember that. I kind of wish we didn't have cell phones still
oh
at some
man,
points.
when it becomes like moments that I have where they stop working or whatever, I'm blissfully reminded of what life used to be
Mhm.
like. Yeah, I can't stand them.
I remember as a kid wanting a pager really bad. And then I think about it now, I'm like, why would you still have to find a phone? Like, why would I want a pager?
Yeah, my mom gave me a pager, or rather they had a pager. They would force me to take it everywhere,
Mm.
but I never used it. If they would buzz it, I would just ignore it. And I didn't even like that. I didn't like pagers either.
That's funny. So, you remember when you debuted and like what your first match was and stuff?
The exact day, I'm not sure. It was the middle of August because it was like right around when school was going to start. And I will have been training at the training school maybe a few weeks, probably not even a month. And I picked up the basics and everything really quickly. Like it was a while before I ever really struggled at things. Like it came to me really naturally, thankfully, because I was really scared that if it doesn't work, or if I'm like scared of something, or if it hurts too much or whatever, if it doesn't work out, I was scared that, well, that was the only thing I knew what I would do with my
Yeah.
life. So who knows what happens now? It's a weird thought to have as a young kid, but I don't know. I was not a mature kid socially, but I had a certain level of real world maturity at a young age where
Mhm.
I thought I knew if this doesn't work, then you're gonna have to make hard decisions like in a few years when you become an adult. Like so. Um, but thankfully everything came to me pretty naturally. And it was only a few weeks before I was tagging along with some of the older guys. They were picking up extra matches. They were other trainees that they really hadn't properly debuted in like the local promotion. So they would go to other promotions around. There was a lot of lucha libre cards. So they would go to these shows in like Pomona, California, for example, and that's where I debuted. and they would get on the undercard. So like, Lucha Libre cards might be 5, 6 matches, and they would say, have 2 or 3 matches advertised. And then, it would say like y dos más, like, and 2 more.
Hmm.
And so then they would just create a couple extra matches the day of, and then those were just extra people that were around. And so the guys would go and try to get some pre-debut matches under their belts on these lucha cards, and I would tag along with them, and they threw me in as the last guy on one of the matches, and that's how I debuted. I had to wear a mask from the merchandise
Yeah,
table.
that's funny.
It's Yeah, because I was just too small and just looked too much like a kid, and the promoter was like, "Here, you got to wear this," and it was like not even like a pro level mask. It's just like a little like copy, and it was somebody else's
Mhm.
mask too. So it's like it was weird. I was wearing, I can't remember whose mask it was, but I probably have it in a closet somewhere. But they made me wear a mask, so but it's a funny experience, and that was like my first few matches in my career were like that. I just would tag along and just try to get thrown on as an extra match
Yeah,
on those things.
that's cool. Yeah. So how long did it take you to, I know you started with New Japan Next, right? How long did it take you to get to there?
So I will have started late 98, summer 98 maybe, and I would just do that. Like I was getting on local cards like that. I debuted for the home promotion attached to the gym, and would get on those. And that probably continued for about a year. So now we're like maybe around 2000, like year 2000 or so. And then the first real, not big break, but kind of a break. This is what kind of got me there was WWF at the time had their developmental in California. It was UPW. So that's
Oh
where
yeah,
John Cena came from. Before Ohio Valley, that's where John Cena came from in Victoria. The Miz came through there, and some others. And so they were based out of LA, and a lot of the local guys could go and get on some of their undercards and like things like that. So I got and it would be kind of like accepting somebody on scholarship, I guess.
yeah.
Because like some of the local guys were also good enough to get in like on developmental contracts or like the equivalent of. I was too young for that. Obviously, they're not going to put a minor on it, but I could train in the gym in the classes. So I was like training with like Cena and Victoria and whoever, and then on their local TV tapings, which would be the equivalent of like local NXT tapings, obviously it wasn't nationwide like NXT, but they would put me on matches on the undercard. So I'd wrestle, say, Brian Kendrick. That's how long we've known each other. So I got different guys, and and I just kind of floated in there for a while. When they lost their developmental um agreement, UPW was not a wrestling company. It was run by an entertainment manager. So
Mhm.
he immediately shifted to, well, I got to find another big company to associate with
Right.
a feeder system because we're not going to be an indie company. Like it's not for wrestling. And so he linked up with a company that just opened up at the time. It was called Zero One in Japan. And Zero One had just opened up as guys that had left New Japan. So there was
Oh,
this
okay.
link, there was like a social link between the two. And that is what provided me the opportunity because now he was the feeder system for Zero One. He was trying to send guys to Zero One. I was kind of denied that opportunity because I was too small and too young.
Mhm.
And they turned down Rocky Romero and other
Oh, wow.
guys that we eventually became the first recruits for New Japan when they opened up an LA gym, and they met us through that because they
Okay.
were still associated in the office. So they kind of came around and said, we would like to scout some of your guys. And UPW was like, well, you could take a look at these guys because in their mind, it's like, this is the garbage left over. But New
Mm.
Japan was like, oh, we'll take these guys. These
Yeah.
guys are, yeah, well, these guys are great. So then we were like kind of X-Men first class for the New Japan dojo. And we, that that was my first opportunity. So New Japan recruited me at 17. I finished high school while going to the dojo, and then as soon as I turned 18, I mean, a week later, they sent me to Tokyo, and I was on my first tour.
Wow.
And ever, I now I'm on this podcast with you.
Yeah,
I blink and 25 years or whatever went by real fast.
man. At 18 going to Japan, that must have been wild.
It was pretty crazy, like because I had some unique experiences when I was younger. So when I was like 13 to about 16, I was doing a lot of shows. I would ditch school on Fridays to make Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows, but they would often be out of town. So I'd have to just jump in the back of a car with total strangers that were going to a show, and then I
Man,
would take a different car, whoever was going to, I might be in San Francisco on a Friday, and then some of the guys were going down to, I don't know, um, San Diego for a show or Anaheim or to Phoenix. And I have to be on that show. Let me jump in with this guy. And I didn't know these people, most of them, or very well at least. Um, I would cross the border to Tijuana and come back, when I was a teenager. When I was maybe 14 or 15, I got robbed at gunpoint by the police coming back
oh my God.
across. You get close to the border and they know that you're an American and leaving. And me and a couple of the guys I was with, we got sat down on the curb in an alley and gun to our head and dumped out our bags, took money or whatever they found, whatever they wanted, I guess, that they felt
These
was
were
valuable.
policemen?
Policemen, yeah. So that's what
Wow.
they would do. They would tax you. Like they would do it in even more official places too. Like let's say you flew in, maybe the promoter, if it was like a Tijuana auditorium promoter, that was a little bit more money in those. So they might fly you in. But if you didn't fly into San Diego and if they flew you into Tijuana, then the airport security police officers, if they knew that you were American because you're passing back and forth, if you had a passport or something like that, they would question you and they would say, well, what kind of documentation do you have? Like, do you
Wow.
have a visa? Like, did you work? What did you do here? You're only here for a day or 2 days. Why were you here? And then, you could try to lie about it, but whether you lie or whether you tell them the truth, eventually you get back to the truth. And then they
Yeah.
tell you, well, you can't do that here. So we're going to have to detain you. And detain you means you may, you may get disappeared. You don't know. And so then they basically are softly asking you for a bribe. And then you end up, they just rob you under light bulbs instead.
Man,
or you walk across the border and they rob you with their gun and send you on your way. Either way, in those days, 20, 25 years ago, that's how they would do it. And so I dealt with that a
wow.
lot. So I was happy to it didn't scare me to go to Japan on a first class ticket, but
No,
when I was 18, freshly 18, that was fine because I had been through much worse already, but
that's
um,
insane. I've never heard that story. Wow.
yeah, I had my fair share of real world experiences, I guess you could say, when I was you know, just a teenager.
I've heard of like promoters back then, like ripping off wrestlers and stuff like that, but I've never heard the police getting you a, that's wild. Wow.
I mean, I don't think it's an every country thing, but it was a Mexico thing for sure at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even now for, we were just talking about it yesterday, the soccer stadium, they have like bags of pee and stuff that they throw at players and all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff.
When shortly after I debuted in New Japan, um the next year they sent me on an excursion to Mexico. So that was my debut for CMLL.
Hmm.
I lived down there for I get most of 2003. So I was down there, I was 18 years old and doing their schedule, which is like a 7 day a week schedule. You work every day in a different arena, which is awesome. It's still kind of like that to this day. Um, but the audiences were rough. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were close enough for them to touch you, then they'll swing on you. They'll put cigarette. I used to have they would put cigarettes out on you as you walk by if you're a bad guy. they'd throw bot. I remember we would be in the ring, they'd throw trash and rocks. If you're in a rodeo arena and it was a dirt ground, they would just throw just rocks at you. They would throw glass bottle because down there they didn't really, at the time, they didn't have like modern bottles, like they didn't have
Yeah, yeah.
plastic bottles, so it was all glass beer and soda bottles. So we'd be in the ring, they'd throw a glass bottle. I remember my partner, and a glass bottle came whizzing through and shattered on his shin guard. Just clanked him in the shin. Um, yeah, it used to be pretty rough.
Yeah. That's insane. Wow. Well, good. I'm glad everybody was okay. And so other than those, I mean, I didn't think that we were going to get into that struggle, but I was going to say like your size and stuff. Did that was that a struggle for you to get into wrestling and other companies and stuff?
Yeah, I mean my size and my age was a big hurdle for me
Because
because
I guess by then you would have like AJ and some of those guys, but not a lot.
yeah, yes, but the culture of the time, I would say probably not until about after 2012 or 13. Before those years, it was very discriminatory, the
Yeah,
size, in any company, even abroad, like in Japan, heavyweights, everywhere around the world, it was discriminatory. It didn't really loosen up until the 2010s, like a few years after that. So it was tough. Age and size were tough because at the time I came in like the late 90s, like the business was a lot older. Like
mm,
guys in it were older, and even the relative like lifestyle of, if that makes sense, like of people that were younger, they were older as younger people back then.
yeah,
So like if I was with somebody that was say 28 years old, if it was today, they play Fortnite
yeah,
and
yeah,
eat fast food, and it's all they almost closely relate to 15-year-olds than they do like what you think an adult would be, right?
yeah,
Today, for somebody that's 28. At that time, there were people that were 28 that were like had been married for years, had a family, had a mortgage, and like they were dealing with alcoholism. Like they had like
yeah,
real grown man problems going on, and like that's the life they lived. And and then yeah, there wasn't a lot of young people in the business at that time. So age was tough because I couldn't relate to anybody personally or professionally. There was nothing that I could relate to them on. And then size wise, I mean, guys were really big, and
yeah,
in that, and like to use your example, like having guys like AJ like come along in the early 2000s as a pioneer of like the smaller guy. AJ's a big guy. He's a
yeah,
he's a really
yeah,
big guy. And people don't understand how big the dudes that were small guys back, like Taka Michinoku is like 6 feet tall.
yeah,
Christian Cage is a big guy. These were the light heavyweights. D'Lo Brown is a big guy.
yeah,
He's like
dealers. Yeah,
D'Lo Brown is a NFL linebacker
yeah,
sized human, and he was a light heavyweight. So it's tough, and even now to this day, I don't know 5'10", which is pretty good, but it's
mhm,
close enough. It's close enough to 6 feet tall that I don't look that small, but that's still small-ish. Like in the real world, it's not that small, but in wrestling, it's tough. So,
yeah.
so yeah,
I mean,
at that time when I was not quite filled out yet and not as tall as I probably would become, it was rough.
well, even before then, Shawn Michaels was the small guy, and he's not small.
No, he's not. But and they really had to inflate like his stats too,
Yeah,
because like he would tell me he's like in his prime he was more like they said he was like 220, but he's really like 185 pounds. And we stand about eye to eye. He's probably 5'11", maybe a legit 6 feet. So we're pretty close to the same height. He's got like an inch or two on me, but he's he's not a big guy for wrestling. You don't
yeah,
realize it. But in real life, like going to the grocery store, he's bigger than you would think. But
yeah,
man, like the discrepancy was tough. And I could only imagine being him at like 5'11", 6 feet, maybe 185, 190 pounds at that time in the 90s with these guys, I like that to me that makes him way greater than what I
Yeah.
thought he would be when I was a kid, you know.
Well, that's why he had Kevin Nash,
Yeah. Yeah.
his
Very
bodyguard.
true. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's cool to like I'm 5'11", so it's cool to see for me when I was growing up and stuff, it's just cool to see guys around your height doing those things. Like I know in basketball, watching like Muggsy Bogues and those guys still kill it. And it's like, oh, maybe I could do something.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Um, do you remember your like first match with New Japan?
Say again.
Do you remember your first match with New Japan?
Yeah, my first match, we had a 3 show set right out of the gate. We went to Korakuen Hall in Tokyo, then we went up to Osaka for 1 show, and we came back to Korakuen Hall. And that first night at Korakuen, it was October, God, I think it was like October the 2nd. Uh, and then it aired 2 weeks later, but it was like a month after my birthday. So I just turned 18. I remember that was a big thing. And I tagged with, we had one heavyweight in the LA dojo, and I tagged with him against Rocky Romero and his partner at the time, which was Ricky Reyes.
Mhm.
So we basically got to wrestle each other, the training partners. Later that night was Brian Danielson's first match in New
Oh wow,
Japan. So he was part of our team. So he was 2 matches after us, I think. He had a singles match against one of the young New Japan wrestlers at the time. So that was our first night on the job. I remember that.
that's
So it was
cool.
cool because I got to wrestle, friends of mine in my first match. And
Yeah,
my
Rocky is
first
so good.
Yeah, incredible. We are probably each other's oldest friends in the business now at this point. Everybody we
Yes.
started with has kind of moved on.
Yeah.
But we're still doing it. And then Osaka on night 2 was my first New Japan opponent, and it was against Tiger Mask, so that was
Oh
cool
wow.
because the original Tiger Mask is one of my biggest influences, and so Tiger Mask 4 is the original Tiger Mask's student. And so
Mm.
that was really cool that they gave me a match against somebody who's essentially my hero.
Yeah,
To this day, I still talk to Tiger Mask often, the number
that's
four
cool.
anyway. Yeah,
That's
and
really
he
cool.
so every time I get a chance to wrestle him now in Japan, we remind ourselves of that first match that I had when I was a dumb little kid, and he's showing me how it's done.
Yeah, I'm sure they walked you through it, right? At that time.
Um, a bit. The thing is like what I was always really good at from early on was leading in the ring.
Oh,
I
okay.
was always really good at that. So I've always been sort of like a quarterback or a point guard in the ring, even at a young age. Even at that time, they trusted my judgment. I wasn't I didn't have the charisma. I still don't. And I wasn't a star. I wasn't physically or socially mature. Um, and there's a lot of I wasn't like the same level of athlete that other guys are, but they trusted my mind.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to be led a lot. In fact, a lot of times they trusted me to lead and then we just collaborated on what we're trying to accomplish. But you still pick up gems here and there, and you try to allow yourself to be led so you understand how to do it better. But yeah,
Mhm.
even at an early age, I didn't have to be led a lot, which is probably what helps me out to this day. Is that's kind of a rare element to have in the
Yeah.
locker room. It's like not a lot of guys can lead that way.
Yeah, that's really impressive. So, can you, I know like with Mexican and with New Japan, it's obviously the language barrier. Are you good at still being able to, do you know certain language or do you know the whole language? Or
Um,
I know
I
like Kenny knows the whole language, right?
Yeah, I can. speak locker room language in both of
Okay.
them. But,
All right.
but fluently on the street, Mexico, I can get by. I know a lot more Spanish than anything else, but
Mhm.
Japanese for me is still very basic.
Yeah.
Um, so I can get by like on the street in Japan, like with very basic things and understand certain things, but I could not, I couldn't give a speech. Like I
Right.
couldn't be
Yeah.
like I couldn't give a presentation,
Yeah.
in Japan. In Mexico, I might be able to kind of lightly get away with it, but not in Japan.
You must have to pick it up quick though to be able to get through a match and like know what each other are doing and
It,
stuff.
yeah, it comes and goes. Like when I'm away from touring for a bit, it takes a couple days for my brain to remember what language is
Mm.
around me, and then it starts coming back like riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, working, like I'm in the working environment more than anything else. So that's the version of the language that I learn is what is the working language, like
Right.
what
Yeah.
we're doing on the job. So then when I'm like and I never go out socially. So when I do go out, like if I go out to eat with the guys or whatever, sometimes we'll get into conversations or have like an interaction with locals or something, and then I struggle to pick up certain things because I'm not in that element as
Right.
much as I am in the locker room. But when I'm in the ring or the locker room, then I could tell people, like I could direct traffic in that sense, like go here, go there, wait, stop, danger, no danger, pain, no
Hmm.
pain, injury, whatever, like time, like I could say certain things that will do the job, but and be able to lead them. But if I were to have a philosophical conversation with somebody, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's interesting how you pick that up because I mean, I was a teacher for like 18 years. Even just being in Lynn, there's a lot of Hispanic people, and these kids would be like talking smack about me in their language, and I'm like, I know what you're saying, right? Because you can just tell,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. You start off by picking up on the energy,
yeah,
and then you could kind of read the vocal language on it, and
yep,
then you start putting together the linguistics, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I was right.
yep. So how did you come into TNA? Where did that transition go to?
Let's see. Well, when I was sent abroad to Mexico, they asked for us because I was there with Rocky Romero and one other guy, and they asked us to stay for longer. And for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like staying there longer than that time. Like I didn't want to extend it and double it up, and I just felt like I wanted to see what I could do away from the other guys. Like I
Hmm.
just, and wrestling was changing at the time. So this is like, I guess late 2003. We were finishing up our initial time at CMLL. They asked us to stay, and then I just kind of thought about it. Like Ring of Honor had just started, TNA was still on their weekly pay-per-view thing, but they had just
Yep.
kind of started, and there was like this sort of buzz about them, and at the time, independent wrestling was still very kind of new, at least the current form of it. And they were starting to see like a lot of different things pop up, and there were things like the Super 8 tournament, in Delaware that was like a launching pad for guys to get like bigger company opportunities. And I just told them I think I'm gonna stay back from coming back to Mexico. I'm gonna go and see what else is out there. And then when I went home, like Ring of Honor threw me on a show at the end of the year in 2003. I think it was their joint show with All Japan. I did an
Oh,
undercard
okay.
match there. And, at that time, I was wrestling as Puma under a mask. So a lot of people now newer fans probably don't even realize it because it's so far back. Um, so that happened. TNA invited me out for a TV taping, so I got to do a little kind of a tryout match or like a little TV appearance for them. And the Super 8 tournament actually booked me and then took me off because they said you're already doing this stuff. You were meant to be a springboard for guys, so we don't feel like it would serve any purpose for you. So they took me
Mm.
off, And then the next year they put me back on and they said, no, we'd like to still use you. So I got to do all these other things and that was just it. Like I came back and the conversations just started because they were like, yeah, we heard about you guys doing stuff in Japan and Mexico. Like, I guess in the sense of there's this group of guys doing stuff in Japan and
Yeah.
Mexico, like I don't want to make this comparison because these guys are legends, so I don't want to say that that's what we are, but it almost like what it would have been like probably in the 90s when you would hear, oh, there's these guys doing stuff in Japan and ECW, maybe we should get them and like just referring to say like Guerrero, Benoit, Two Cold
Yeah.
Scorpio, Malenko, and it's just guys that were doing running around in their own circle. So we were doing that, and then when I contacted those companies, TNA and Ring of Honor, like, yeah, we've heard of you guys, so come in and do some stuff. And I was the first one to kind of come back from Japan and Mexico and do it.
Well, did you go right into doing Manic, or did you do other stuff first? I remember you as
Oh,
Manic.
that was man, that was a funny kind of long story. So like I when I got back, I bounced around between Ring of Honor, TNA, and New Japan for a few years after that. And then somewhere in the mid to late 2000s, I was no longer appearing in New Japan and I was mostly just doing TNA, some Ring of Honor and Independence, which had now grown more and I had been invited to do some matches for like WWE and stuff, like just to
Mm.
be an extra, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I was in TNA and we were doing a pay-per-view. I want to say this was maybe 2007 or 8. We were in Houston for Destination X. It was one of the things I was on Team Japan for like a pay-per-view that they had. And we were in the locker room and Frankie Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, these guys are all Southern California guys as well. So we all kind of came up like in that scene, like around the same time. And Frankie had came back in the room and he had just had a meeting with some of the office members and they had presented him the idea, the concept of suicide.
Is that, yep.
Uh, and he was like, he had just gotten out of a really bad storyline already where he was like this kind of like a cult member, like I
Oh
can't
yeah, I remember
remember.
that.
Yeah, like it was like sort of like the flock.
Yeah. Yep.
And he had been begging forever to just be able to be himself again. He hated that. And so he came back in and he was like dejected and we're like, what's up? And like he's like, they pitched me this thing. I don't want to do it, this mask character. And he had just gotten to start being Frankie Kazarian again. And they pitched him this character and he didn't want to do it. And I remember Christopher Daniels saying, that's so dumb. And they should just have TJ do it. He's already wrestling in a mask anyway, because I was Puma.
Yeah,
And
Puma, yeah.
we just kind of laughed it off because I had been struggling to keep regular dates with TNA because they didn't know what to do with my mask character anyway. They're like, your wrestling's great, but we just don't know what kind of story to tell with you. So I wouldn't get consistent work. So we laughed like, yeah, TJ should just do it. And we thought nothing of it. So Frankie became Suicide and he got hurt. So Christopher Daniels had to also become Suicide
Yep.
because of that. So it's funny because they kind of ended up having to weather that storm together. And then fast forward a few years, the character had died out, and I had finished up a contract at Ring of Honor, and I was going to TNA, and they were offering me a deal, and I was sitting at home. I had no matches. It was the same problem as before. They just didn't know what to do with me. And I saw these bumpers on the show, like Suicide is coming back. Suicides will be back in 2 weeks. Suicide will be here next week. And I just remembered, I was like, nobody that's ever portrayed this thing liked it. They had like 3 different ones in the last few
Yep.
years. And so I thought they're probably just going to get some poor dude to do it that doesn't want to do it. And so I called into the office and it was Al Snow that I talked to at the time he was there. And I said, do you guys have a plan for this, or is just some guy's going to do it? You just bring back the character. And I said, because if not, I want to do it. I have nothing to do right now. I'm just sitting at home. I would love to do it. And so they said, okay, we'll think about it. And then they said, yeah, sure, come in and we'll do it. And they brought me in. It was in Tampa, Florida, at the Sun Dome or whatever that arena is. And I did it, and then they were like, I remember Dixie was like the loudest voice. She was like, "This is what we always thought the character was gonna move and perform like." And in my mind, I just was trying to do what I felt was like Deadpool and Spider-Man together.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
just move, like he should move like those guys, and as a personality, he should have like what Deadpool has. So I was trying to make it a little bit less serious and a little less cheesy. Well, cheesy in a purposeful way, I guess, you
Yep.
know. And then they were like, okay, and that was maybe around 2012. So they went through like 4 years of not figuring it out. And then it was like 2013. Then I came back around, and what started as a joke became the reality. And I took on the moniker, and to this day, people still think of me as Suicide.
And then it became Manic, right? It was a
Yes.
spawn off of that.
Yeah, so that was because one of those first few pay-per-views where I was Suicide, we were going to Boston for Slammiversary, and I had a title match there with Chris Sabin and Kenny King. And it was not that long after that bombing that was the marathon.
Yep.
And it was like, God, it was like, I want to say it was like just the week before, like a month before. It's very recent. And I remember saying, like, I know it's not suicide, but it is sort of like a bummer time in a
Yeah.
city that's a little bit delicate right now. And I could tell because like the way that the company was changing at the time, we were doing arenas and like live TV. Like it was like what AEW is now. They were trying to go big, you know.
Yep.
They had brought in big stars, you know, we had guys like the Hardys coming in and Kurt Angle and Booker T and Sting and all these guys, and they were doing arena like 10,000 seat arenas and stuff, and they're really trying to commercialize. And I remember asking them like, "Do you think maybe now's the time to think about changing this?" And also too to put into perspective, like Marvel movies and things hadn't really taken off yet, so like the
Mhm.
idea of creating a character that was meant to look like an anti-hero or a superhero with the Suicide moniker, it wasn't a proven concept yet that
Yeah.
that's okay for
Like if they
kids.
did it now.
If they do it now, it's fine because we've
Yeah.
had Suicide Squad, we've had, the Avengers, and we've had dark like hero movies and things like
Yep.
that. Totally accepted now. It's very different. But at that time, way different. So I was like, if you guys wanted to change it, I'm just suggesting maybe now is the time. I didn't have an idea for what to change it to, just that if you want to do it, maybe now's the time because you're going to unmask me because they wanted to do this thing where they reveal who the identity was. And I was
Hmm.
like, we can figure out a way to do it. And so then they figured out, I don't know who decided on Manic. I think it was Hulk Hogan actually, maybe. But somebody in that room decided it. But I was the one that presented the idea that maybe now is the time to change it. And they did, and then it became the spin-off character, and the
Yeah. I
rest
didn't.
is
I didn't know it had to do with the marathon bombing. That's interesting because that
yeah,
that
just
was
I saw that on the schedule, and I thought, because like it was also like the initial stages of cancel culture at that time,
yeah.
so like people were really waiting for opportunities to jump on something to be mad or like react, and I was like, guys, this is probably the right time to make a conscious decision to change it,
Yeah.
if you want.
It
Personally, it
was.
doesn't offend me or make anything, for me, but like that like this might be the right time to do it, so just do it now. And so they did.
Yeah, that was smart because I remember that vividly because some cousins were living in Boston at the time. We were calling around, making sure everybody was okay, and they didn't catch the guy for a few days or something like that. So everybody was on edge. So that's a good good move to get rid
Yeah,
of.
and like I said, it's not related, and it's in any sense, it could have been, I could have just continued being Suicide and people would have thought nothing of it, maybe.
Yeah,
That's fine. But I just thought you guys are trying to go big, and now you guys have advertisers and different things that didn't exist before.
yeah,
Now might be the time to just say, okay, let's not have a character named Suicide that's like fucking blowing his brains out every
yeah.
show. Now I feel like it would be cool and different, but you
It'd
know.
be big. Yeah, I know. And they built I remember the video game, they built it around suicide, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was cool. So you won the X Division title there. How did you, how was that? You got a singles title.
Yeah, it was it was nice because prior to returning to TNA around 2008 or 9, I decided to kind of just quit all these wrestling jobs and I went
Mm,
to Florida. I moved to Florida so that I could go to FCW. I wasn't invited, I wasn't signed, there was no offer on the table, but they had a night camp separate from their contracted day development daytime practices. They had a nighttime practice that they had a 3 month camp that anybody can walk on and just sign
mm,
up. And so I had been doing a lot of WWE TV like invites at that time. So like I would go to Raw, SmackDown, all these things in California. This is when I was living still before I moved. And it was Tommy Dreamer that pulled me aside one day and he said, "Look, like your wrestling is really good and there is value in you, but you're taking these invites and coming here. You can't expect to get a job here at the and remember at this time they're still very discriminatory against small guys too.
mm,
So like he's like, you're spinning your wheels by doing this. Like if you came here because you expected to just get some money for your work and do your thing, that's one thing. But I could tell that you are trying to get a job, and here's not going to be the way to do it. He's like, you're not the right size for what's going to open their eyes, and you're also hoping to prove something to them on shows where they're more concerned about making sure that Cena's promo is blocked off
mm.
correctly, or
Yep.
the segments are ordered and all that. They don't care about you on this day here.
Right.
So he's like, instead of taking all these, which he's like, it's good that they're inviting you. That means they know who you are. But he's like, why don't you try walking in the back door instead of the front door, so to speak? And so I said, okay. And so I was always told, you have to be willing to be coachable and you have to be willing to make those sacrifices. You can't question it. And you can't be like, yeah, but I got this going on, or this isn't really a good time for me to do this. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I literally quit everything, quit New Japan, quit TNA, quit Ring of Honor, quit all the
Mm,
indie spots that I had regularly every month that I was taking, quit it all, and went signed up at FCW in their nighttime camp as if I'd never wrestled before. I literally filled out the thing. I'd been wrestling for 10 years. I'd wrestled in the Tokyo Dome and Arena Mexico and all these things. I pretended like I am TJ Perkins, a guy that's never wrestled before, and I signed up. And I remember the very first practice, Norman Smiley, he didn't even see me wrestle. He just saw me get in the ring. He's like, just watching my body language get in the ring, he's like, I know that you are not like the rest of these guys. And I had a really good camp, but at the end of the run, 3 months later, they're like, we have nothing for you. We don't know what you would do. There was a chance at one point because Low Key was under contract at the time and he got hurt.
oh
He hurt
yeah.
his knee.
Yeah.
And they were thinking about having Low Key portray a rival for Mystico or Rey Mysterio, like a dark mirrored version of one of those guys.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say it was Mystico, but I can't remember. It's been so long. But that was an idea that they had, and then he got hurt. And then I remember some of the developmental coaches said, because I would press them, like, I came here to get a job. I'm trying to further my career. I'm trying to not take no for an answer and do
Mhm.
everything that you guys say we should do. And I remember them saying, well, there was this idea that had been going around for Loki and he got hurt and you kind of fit the description, but it didn't come about. And then at the end of the time, they're like, well, you know, you can go anywhere you want, but you can't stay here, that sort of thing. So I was now stuck across the country in the middle of the recession, quit all my wrestling jobs. They had since been filled with a generation of brilliantly talented wrestlers like Adam
Yeah.
Cole and, you know, the Young Bucks and people like all these really talented guys had taken up my spots everywhere that I had. And so there wasn't really a job to go back to. Um, and I was homeless. So I ended up homeless in Florida. And the reason I tell this story is because I dealt with that for about a year and had to start all over. I was doing low level indies and bars and things like that just to eat. I was literally living out of a car, bouncing around rooms for rent, collecting coins on in parking lots at midnight, eating dollar menu foods, dumpster diving, stuff like that. And I was miserable. I wanted to quit wrestling, but wrestling was the only thing that I could do to make petty cash because it was the recession. They weren't going to hire anybody, and don't have an education. I was
Mm.
23 years old, barely finished high school, and nobody could get jobs at that time. So nobody's going to hire me for anything. I had no skills. The only skill I had was what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so little by little, I started traveling around more and getting on bigger shows as if I literally just started my career all over 10 years into it. Just went from here to
Wow.
here and then started back. Uh, and then when I got to Ring of Honor, they signed me for a couple years, and then TNA asked about my availability. And then when I went there, they put me as Suicide, the story that I told you, and then a few pay-per-views in, I won the X Division title, and that it was like, wow, I was homeless very recently, and now I'm here where I didn't think that I would be here even when things were good.
That's
So,
unreal. Wow.
so that was really what that was about. So then later in WWE, when they told that story, they really like focused heavily on, well, this kid used to be homeless and he, pulled himself out of the gutter and stuff.
Yeah.
The part of the story they didn't tell is that I was homeless trying to work for them. And they were the ones
Because of
that
that.
said
Yeah.
no and slammed the door on me. That's why I
Yeah.
was homeless. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they
But
can tell
in
that
any case, I
story.
still think it's a good. But it's not. Yeah. Well, it's still a good story. It's not their fault. It's my fault. And people fail, and that was a
Yeah.
big thing. Like people, you just have to accept. Like sometimes you fail. I failed. I have no issue saying that. I failed. I tried to throw further than I can throw, and it didn't. The ball didn't go that far. I failed, and that's you. You just get up. You get up and you figure it out. And the second time that they put the ball in my hands, I didn't fail. So it's fine. You know.
Yeah, that's so when you got the title, I know like people outside of the wrestling industry always talk about, oh, it's fake and all that type of stuff. But those moments, like when you got like, I don't know if you watched All In this past weekend, but when Dustin Rhodes got the TNT title, he was like bawling his eyes out because it was
Huh.
his first single title in, I think, like 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, did something similar happen to you where you like you just said, I was homeless. Now I'm on top.
The title. It is just a thing. It is just a prop,
Yeah.
But some of my peers are kind of hard on other guys that they still look at it from like a kid's like lens, like some of my peers, they have trophy cases and stuff like that. And then some of my peers will look at that like, oh, that's so childish. This business is fake. These are just props. You're insane people if you do that. Um, and I think that's too far because I mean, it's like, if you were an actor, you might have some movie posters of some really good pieces of work that you did that you're proud of or that you're happy or that you just want to remember that point in time, show your kids like, hey, I was in this movie once. I won an Oscar or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, is the Oscar that important? No, the Oscar's not that important. But this was a time in my life where things were really good and I made a lot of money and I gave you kids a good life. So in that sense, it marks that. So like for me, yes, the title is just a prop. It doesn't really mean anything. They never go to people who are the best at the job because that's not what it's for. It's just a storytelling point.
Right.
Um, it would be like getting it would be like putting a World Series trophy in your room because you played the pitcher in a baseball movie that won the World Series. Like it's not. It's just a piece of the story that told your character's story. However, in my house, I do have like titles that I've won because of the reason I said before that it makes me, it's not about the title. It makes me look back at a time when I was able to give myself security
Mm.
because I used to sleep like literally with the sky above me sometimes. And you don't know if you're going to make it home or even have, you don't know if tomorrow is going to be tomorrow, in that sense.
Yeah.
So when I won the title, I felt a certain way about it, not because of what I was holding, but because what I was holding meant that I would have this job tomorrow.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
there was a point in time where I didn't know if I would have that job tomorrow. So any of those types of things, that's how I look at it. It's really not about the title. It doesn't mean that I was the best guy at that job. Nobody's ever really the best at it. It's art. It's subjective. But it meant that I could feed myself tomorrow.
Yeah.
That meant a lot to me. So yes, there were times where I cried real tears because it was like I can actually comfortably say I could buy clothes or food and I'm not like it's plausible and I'm safe.
And it's the company really saying, like, I trust you and we're putting
Yes,
faith in
yes.
you, kind of thing.
Yes, and that's the thing. It'd be like it's like having an employee of the month
Yeah.
certificate. You know what I mean? Like you might save those if you were a manager at a workplace for like 20 years or something. You might save a few of those and say, I was pretty
Getting
good
the
at my job.
bonus or, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like they give you a watch or something at the end of the year because you outsold everybody or some you had a killer year. Yeah. Like, are you celebrating Rolex? No. But you're celebrating what they said you meant to them
Yeah.
at one point in time. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. My dad still has a clock that they gave him. He was an electrician for 37 years. And the only time he was ever out was when my sister was sick. And he looks back at it like, I busted my ass. Like that's what that shows.
Yeah. So yeah, in that sense, when I won the X Division title, that I felt like that. That's how I
Yeah.
felt. And I felt like that when I got the cruiserweight title too, you know.
Yeah, you were the first. You did the Cruiserweight Classic and won the whole thing like that. I remember watching that whole thing. They had some real talented people, and it's really cool to think, like, for you to look back and like, yeah, I won that thing. And
Yeah, it was when I first started wrestling, one of the biggest inspirations for me was the Super J Cup. New
yep.
Japan had sponsored this tournament that was a collaboration with all the other companies. And the first two were in 94 and 95. And I remember watching that and thinking, this this now is something I really want to do. Because I
Mm,
grew up like anybody else of our generation. I grew up on Hogan and Piper and Jake the Snake, and it's like that's really cool. Man, this would be so fun to do. But like, I'm not these guys, man. I can't
yeah,
like,
yeah,
where do I fit in that? But when I saw Jushin Liger and Eddie Guerrero and Benoit, Malenko and these guys, like I was like, I can fit in there. If I can find a way to get good at this, that's my jam. And so when the Cruiserweight Classic came up and they Regal called me one day. There was another point in time where I kind of was drifting. I didn't know what I was going to do. I finished up at TNA. I was no longer Suicide. I was just doing independence. I thought I met with Lucha Underground. I thought I might
mm,
sign there to do work there. I wasn't in any danger like I was when I was homeless. So I just didn't know what my career was going to be at that point. I was just kind of like, I'm gonna go back to Japan, go back to Mexico, and just get back to what I love, right? So Regal called me and was like, "There's this thing, a cruiserweight tournament we're putting together." The original name was like the Global Cruiserweight Series, I think. They ended up changing it to Classic, but and they said we would like you to do it. And then he followed up and was asked me to help recruit guys. He's like, who else is out there in the world that would be good for this? So I'd tell him some of the guys I met, like guys to look at and different things. And then but I could tell like even if WWE doesn't value this, they're doing it at a time where wrestling fans are going to look at it like how people looked at the J Cup when
yep,
it first came out. Like this is very different and special because they never used to like be open to like the guys that were like painted with independent wrestling colors. You know,
Hmm.
they wanted that nowhere near their company before, and they would selectively pick guys if they had them. So at that time, you know, they didn't have NXT was cool, but they didn't have a ton of guys that were like represented independent wrestling. They had certain guys that were like exceptions for them, you know, like they had Finn Balor,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
Generico they had gotten him, but he was like people didn't know if he would make it when they got him. Um, they had Steen, and I think if I remember correctly, they weren't even that high on Steen until I think Regal had him cut promos, and he could
Until
show
that
like
promo. Yep.
yeah, until he could show like more layers to what they would be missing on top of him being an incredible wrestler, you know. So they didn't really have that many guys like that. And the guys that they did have like that, they tried to shoehorn them in as WWE guys. Like they were
Yep.
wrestling against WWE opponents, trying to do WWE style, you know. Um, and so when the Cruiserweight Classic came, I was like, I thought this they never opened their doors like this to the outside. And they weren't trying to change guys or anything. Guys were keeping their names.
Yeah.
They didn't
Yep.
change costumes, nothing. They're like, just do what you do. I remember thinking, all right, I don't even care if I'm going to WWE because I might just go to Lucha Underground and go back to Japan. But I will do this tournament because this is going to change perception of how not just fans look at it, but I didn't, you know, wasn't even sure, but like if WWE would change how they looked at it. But sure enough, I mean, it turned out so good that after that, they were like, let's get more of these guys, you know. Then all of a
Hmm.
sudden it was like, you know, let's get Adam Cole, let's get Roderick Strong, let's get, you know, Kyle O'Reilly, let's get all these guys. And they've never been the same since that like
Yep.
the company is completely flipped around. Now it's excellent wrestling, a melting pot of everything. You know, they recruit anybody. You know, it's changed everything. So that was big to me. You know, the title was cool, but just being part of something that changed the industry was is more important to me.
Yeah, I know people that I like when I was younger that I watched wrestling with that kind of died off from wrestling that watched that and was like, "Oh, this is great." And solely
Yeah.
watch that. They came back to watch that because like you said, there was kind of like the Super J Cup or any of those tournaments that they have because that's what diehard wrestling fans like.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I'll get asked a lot in interviews or whenever, man, they only did one. It was so great. Like, it would be so cool if they did it again. Or it's too bad the cruiserweight division isn't around anymore. It's too bad 205 isn't around anymore. Like, it wasn't appreciated when it was around, and it was a little bit ahead of its time for what, you know, probably would be appreciated more now.
Yeah,
And you know, they would ask people would ask me like, don't you think it'd be great if they did another one? And like the initial response is, of course, like more of anything that was great would be great. But then when I think about it, like my actual answer is they do it every day. The whole company is
yeah,
Cruiserweight Classic now. Like
it's true.
they don't need to do another one because the entire company is full of them. Some of them aren't even wrestlers. Jake Logan Paul is a better cruiserweight than most cruiserweights I've ever met. He's so good for not being a wrestler.
I
Like
know it's so aggravating.
every there's the like the whole show is what the Cruiserweight Classic represented now. So it's like they they wouldn't need to do another one because the whole company is the world of wrestling, which is what the Cruiserweight Classic represented was like this is everything from the outside that you don't have yet that you're missing.
Yep.
They're no longer missing it.
Yeah, and with AEW now with the Forbidden Door and you get everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Well, I've taken up a lot of your
They should
time,
do a
so
trios tournament.
oh yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I've taken up a lot of your time, so let's move on to the lightning round, I call it. But I would
Okay.
love to get you back on to, I mean,
Of
you have
course.
such a long historic career. Um,
I'm older than people think. We could just say that.
you can't say that you're too old though, because you're like only 2 years older than me.
Well, I'm a late bloomer.
That's like, you know, Al Horford, the basketball
Yeah,
player.
of course,
They
yeah.
always say how old he is. He's 3 days older than me.
How do you
And
think I feel? LeBron is like 3 months younger than me.
yeah,
And they're like, retire, old man. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
he's not old.
I've been wrestling longer than he's been playing basketball, and we're the
Yep.
same age.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how in sports you're old.
Yeah.
Um,
In sports, I'm old. In acting and performance, I'm still young.
yeah,
I'm trying to hit those Sean Connery years, you know.
yeah. So so this is the start of the wrestling, I mean
Okay.
the lightning round. Who's your favorite wrestler of all time or your Mount Rushmore?
Oh, wow. I guess if I built a Rushmore, and this is just my favorites. It's not like, if they're maybe the best or if they're influential to the world, but this is just for me. My Rushmore would probably be um, Eddie, Sean, Tiger Mask, then God, it's so hard. Maybe Brett.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
the fourth one is always wishy-washy.
it's tough because there's a lot of guys that influence me in a certain way, and I feel like I almost go in Inoki. I'm the last Inoki student, so I guess
Mm,
sorry, Inoki-san. But I might go Brett. I might go Brett.
that's cool. You're the last Noki student. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite match that you've been a part of?
Um, there was a match in TNA that I had. I don't know if this is my all-time favorite, but it's the first one that comes to mind is maybe this is my favorite. Back in 2006, I was in New Japan. And TNA wanted to use me for their X Cup as a Team Japan member, and I tore my knee a couple weeks before the lead up to it, and they were like, okay, we can wait a couple weeks, and then they called back and say, okay, if you can't start doing these preliminary matches before the pay-per-view starts, we're just going to cut you from the thing. And I was like, oh God, I got to do it. So I came in on one leg and did this Destination X pay-per-view with a torn meniscus. And I had given myself frostbite from over icing. Like I was trying to like rehab it and make it like healthy, and I was like, I fucked it up worse. And I did this four-way with Chris Sabin, Petey Williams, and Sanjay Dutt. And it,
Oh
it
yeah.
turned out to be like maybe not the match of the year for them, but like their on demand, it was like the highest watched
Mhm.
match for like years. And it was this incredible match that we had. And I remembered I had to do it on one leg. My leg was taped stiff like a broom. And I just remember thinking, wow, I'm really proud that I got through this. Because I was only like 19 years old,
That's
But
wild.
that's my favorite. That's my favorite that I think um off the top of my head.
And what would your favorite match that you're not in be? I would tell you mine. Mine, I always go to either Brett versus Stone Cold, the double turn,
That's a great one.
or the first TLC.
Yeah, yeah, both really good ones. I would probably say the first Brett and Sean Iron Man was big for
Oh
me
yeah.
because I was in Southern California and I saw it live. I was there on the
Oh wow.
floor. Um, and then Eddie and Dean, their 2 out of 3 falls match in ECW. Those are my two
Nice.
favorites.
Favorite TV show?
Supernatural.
Oh, okay. Favorite movie
Ooh, that's a tough one.
or a couple?
Most most days I would say The Prestige. I just think it's a great
Okay.
allegory for pro wrestling. Like for people
Mhm.
that are in pro wrestling, it tells a great story that's a great sort of allegory for our business.
Yeah. Favorite music, like or artist or
Maybe artist all time, probably Nirvana, I would say.
nice.
Yeah, I was
Nice.
an 80s and 90s kid, so a bulk of my growing up was during the grunge era of
Yep.
rock. So it's a lot of like grunge, punk rock, alternative rock, but Nirvana is probably my favorite.
Yeah, mine was those guys, but like those couple of groups, the grunge, but now it's taken over by do you know who Alter Bridge is?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
they're my favorite of all time. I've seen them probably like 12 times. But yeah, favorite food.
Pizza.
Nice. And finally, favorite animal.
Ooh, I don't know. I guess I probably have multiple answers for this one. I was never a pet person, so I never really had pets growing up. And then I ended up getting mini pigs as a pet.
Mm,
Um, and I became fascinated with them. I still have the first one that I had to this day. So I might say pig for that reason. My wife is a really big dog person, and I was never a dog person. That's why I ended up getting pigs, but now I've become a dog person.
mhm.
So there's that. But my favorite, and this is a symbolic answer, but my favorite um, wrestling hold is the octopus hold
Oh,
from
okay. Yeah.
the Ming and Inoki student. That's my favorite move. And my oldest son is fascinated with ocean stuff like fish and sharks and different things like that. And so I got this big octopus tattoo on my
Oh, wow.
neck for that reason.
That's cool.
It connects me to my oldest boy a little bit and my coach in a way and my favorite move in the industry that has given me life. So
That's awesome.
octopus, and because the symbology of the octopus being like a symbol of wisdom and flexibility, like
Mhm.
in this sense of adaptability. Like octopus are, it's a survivor animal. It's an
Yeah.
adaptable animal. So I think that I'm creeping up on 30 years in this business. I think I had to adapt and survive in order to
Yeah.
get by because I'm certainly not the Rock.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I think that's my favorite question to ask people because I thought I would always get dog or cat, and I
Yeah.
haven't gotten any of that. I've gotten like elephant, I've gotten all sorts of different ones. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Are there any socials or plugs or your next event that you're going to be wrestling at or
I don't really have anything to plug. I could name some events or shows, but there's so many coming up because I'm doing a lot more independents this year, and I'd leave some out if I started naming them, and everybody that's gonna watch them knows where they are anyway.
okay.
I wouldn't be selling anything new to people. I'm not too big on socials, and when I do, I'm just arguing with people over sports, so it doesn't really mean anything. But I'm mega TJP on anything on the two main ones. I don't have anything else. I don't have a real Facebook. I don't. I'm a boring person, so I don't really have much to plug.
Well, if you're into sports, we'll need to talk about that too. I'm a huge sports fan.
Hey, likewise, likewise. I love it. I mean, it shaped my childhood and
Hmm.
forced me into this because I didn't have any real life goals. So,
Oh, same. All right. So with me, it's Bobbo's World. Whoever's watching Bobbo's World on YouTube, and please go. We do this channel in honor, like I told TJ, in honor of my sister Sarah that passed away. She died of muscular dystrophy. So we try to give scholarships to people with disabilities and try to raise money for people with ALS and muscular dystrophy because we've had a bunch of family members have ALS too. So if you want to donate, go to sweetsadie.org. And thank you for watching. See you guys next time. Peace. Thank you, TJ.